Class 12. Today we will discuss about the second part of the chapter, evolution. What is evolution? Evolution is the slow, gradual and irreversible change from the simplest form of living organism to the complex form. The term evolution was coined by Herbert Spencer. Today we will discuss about the two most important theories of evolution, Lamarckism and Darwinism. First, let's come to Lamarckism. Lamarckism, as you can understand, was proposed by Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck, and the theory was also known as theory of inheritance of acquired characters. The theory has three postulates: new needs, use and disuse, and inheritance of acquired characters. Now, what does these postulates mean? New needs first. Organisms may develop new organs, and the development of these organs is the result of some specific and continuous need of the body due to some changes in the environment. Now, Lamarck believed that if an organ is used constantly and continuously, it would tend to become highly developed, whereas if the particular organ was disused or not used regularly, it was resulted in degeneration. And these new characteristics that developed due to use and disuse were known as acquired characters, and they were transmitted to the next generation. These postulates were explained by Lamarck with respect to giraffe, which were found in the primitive environment in the forest. Lamarck claimed that giraffe were found in the forest only with short neck and shorter forelimbs. There were no giraffe with tall neck, according to Lamarck. He said that these giraffe used to feed on grass. Since they all had short neck, they could not feed on the leaves of the trees. Now, the rate of reproduction of giraffe, the number of giraffe that were formed by reproduction, were much more than the amount of grass found on the surface of the forest. Now, these number of giraffe were feeding on the grass of the surface. As a result, a time came when surface vegetation finished. Then, for survival, these giraffe had to stretch their neck, stretch their forelimbs to reach the leaves of the trees. Now, some of them could stretch their neck harder, some couldn't. Stretching of necks resulted in elongation of their necks, and new acquired characters were formed. This elongated or long neck and long forelimbs were supposed to be new acquired characters, and these new acquired characters were transmitted to the next generation. This was how Lamarck had explained the theory of evolution. So he started with that forests had only one type of giraffe, that is giraffe with short neck, which was contradictory to Darwinism. Darwin said giraffe were of two types, some with tall neck and some with short neck. So let's come to Darwinism. Charles Darwin proposed this theory, and this was known as theory of natural selection. And what are the postulates that explain Darwin's theory? Overproduction, limited food and space, struggle for existence, variations, survival of the fittest, natural selection, and finally, origin of new species. Now, overproduction, that means the rate of reproduction of animals was much faster than the rate of formation of grass on the forest surface. Living organisms have a strong desire to produce their own progeny to continue their race. So there was overproduction of organisms compared to the production of or formation of grasses. Since there was more number of organisms, there was limited food and limited space for them in the forest. As a result, they started struggling for existence. The animals struggled for existence within the same environment. And this struggle for existence can be classified under three headings. Intraspecific struggle, that is struggle with the other members of the same species. Interspecific struggle, struggle with the members of some different species. And struggle with the environment. So struggle for existence may be of intraspecific, interspecific type, or struggle with the environment. Now, in order to cope up with these changes, the animals went through certain variations. Due to adaptations, they developed some variations and they became more adapted than their predecessors. These variations helped them to survive in the new changed environment. And who survived? Of course, the fittest one. In the struggle for existence, the one who was the fittest survived in nature. And nature selected them for future presence in the environment. This was known as natural selection. The word was given by Darwin himself. And after natural selection, those particular living organisms who could survive after that struggle, they were selected by nature and they were considered as the new species on Earth. And this is how new species originated. This origin of new species was termed as speciation by Darwin. He again explained his postulates, again with the help of the giraffe's example. He claimed that in earlier times, in the forest, there were giraffe of both the types. Giraffe with short neck as well as giraffe with long neck. When ground vegetation disappeared due to excessive number of giraffe in the forest, the short-necked giraffe couldn't feed and they perished because they had short neck and they couldn't reach the leaves of the trees. As well, they couldn't get any grass on the surface also and they perished. But the long-necked giraffe who had the ability to reach the leaves of the trees, they could feed on the tree leaves and they survived. So in the struggle for existence between the short neck and the long neck, the new character of long neck in this giraffe helped them to survive. So they were the fittest and they survived. This long neck giraffe was selected by nature and this character was inherited to the next generation. This was how Darwin explained theory of evolution. Thank you. Now we will discuss about the Hardy-Weinberg Principle, which plays a very important role in evolution. This principle says that in a large population, the gene frequencies or the allele frequencies are stable and they remain constant from generation to generation when there are no immigration or emigration. The gene pool remains constant. And this is called genetic equilibrium or Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Sum total of all the allele frequencies is always 1. Now, let's consider two genes. Gene capital A with its allele small a. Let the allele frequency of capital A be denoted by P and allele frequency of small a be denoted by Q. Now, as you have done in class 10, a cross between heterozygous and a heterozygous. So, capital A small a is another heterozygous, capital A small a another heterozygous. So, when you are crossing one heterozygous with another heterozygous, what do we get? We get capital A, which means small p, that is small p square. We get capital A small a, which means PQ. Again capital A small a, which means again PQ. And small a in the last box, which means Q square. So in a diploid individual with capital A, frequency will be P square. P square. In individual with small a, frequency will be Q square. q square. And frequency of capital A, small a. So how many capital A, small a will you get in this checkerboard? One here and another here. So two individuals with capital A, small a. That means you will have PQ plus PQ. 2 PQ. So according to this Hardy-Weinberg principle, sum total of all allele frequencies, that is sum total of P square from here, Q square from here, and 2 PQ from here. So sum total of all the allele frequencies for a gene is 1. And now you can see this algebraic equation. P square plus Q square plus 2PQ, which means P plus Q whole square is equal to 1. Thus, in a large population, allele frequency will be constant in all generations when there are no evolutionary forces acting on them. And the last part that we will discuss today are the 3 different types of natural selection. Now, natural selection, as we have discussed by Charles Darwin, it was proposed. And what are the 3 types of natural selection? That we will discuss right now. Natural selection operates in different ways. Generally, it occurs in the following 3 ways. First, let's come to a normal population. A normal population showing extremely large organisms, extremely small organisms, and at the center, maximum number of intermediate or medium-sized organisms. So, in the x-axis, along the x-axis, you get the size of the organisms. Along the y-axis, you get the number of the individuals in that population. This gives you a normal graph in the normal population. Now, what happens in directional type of natural selection? A way of natural selection where more individuals acquire value other than the mean character value. This type of natural selection leads to speciation. Any one particular phenotype produces regular change in the gene pool of a population in one direction. Either in this direction or in this direction, any one particular type increases in number. So any one particular extremes will increase in number, allowing the graph to move in one direction. This is called directional natural selection, which gives rise to speciation or new species formation. Disruptive natural selection, it simultaneously favors both the extreme phenotypes, that means the extremely small sized organisms and the extremely large sized organisms are favored in this natural selection. And so the graph is disruptive. The intermediate types, the medium size or the intermediate types are eliminated in this population. So this is called disruptive natural selection. And in stabilizing natural selection, it favors the intermediate forms. Here the intermediate forms are eliminated and the extreme forms are favored. Here the extreme forms are eliminated and the intermediate or the medium-sized organisms are favored. It favors average or normal phenotypes and eliminates any new mutation. It favors the intermediate forms or the homozygous individuals. And the extreme types are eliminated. This is called a stabilizing type of natural selection. So these are the 3 types of natural selection: directional, disruptive, and stabilizing. Thank you.